Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in the world. This is Scott Robertson. Once again, it's August 13th, 2026. And I recently posted a a model railroad design of my version of something I called the 28th Street Freight Terminal or urban themed switching layout. I did it in Trains 2019, and it was just my version or interpretation of a design that's based on an actual railroad that once existed in New York. In this case, it was the Erie Railroad that operated this freight terminal. There were numerous terminals in and around New York City. Um, but doing that design and doing some research, I came across others who have done something similar, including Dave Ramos, who has a website which is the New York Harbor Railroad. He has an extensive railroad in HO scale, crawling around his basement of various uh, versions of not only this terminal, but other terminals that he operates sessions on. And a little shout out to him. Some of the inspiration for this came from him, along with information I found online, a site called the Train Web, where I came across. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Yeah, uh, this this site here, and it has extensive information on railroads around New York. It's a little weird to work your way through, but it's just a huge amount of information on this site. But anyways, it has maps and diagrams, and I'd come across this before and was always kind of intrigued with this one area known as the 28th Street Freight Terminal. And what it is this is actually a room that a friend of mine has. It's a basement. This is in Northern California. And so I like to use his room, this basement, as a canvas, and I use it a lot of times to design various railroads in narrow gauge, O scale. I've done S scale, I've done ON30, just to see what fits in this basement. He currently has his own railroad being built in this basement, but I like to use it. It's a fairly decent size, obviously. It's not your typical bedroom or garage. And it has a few design constraints that, make it work from a point of view of, well, what's feasible in a real situation? What could you do or not do? Just give you a little lay of the land. You come from some stairs that are down in this area, come to an entry door, and there's actually a workshop back in this area. That's not very large, but you can get two people inside there. It's got a little L-shaped work area that is great for doing your everyday modeling in. So there obviously needs to be access into this door. There are no windows in the basement. However, there is a room back in this area, very small. It's only like 4 feet deep. Apparently, it used to be stairs that led into this basement, and then the house was reconfigured at some point in time. But back in this corner is the water heater. So the rest of this area, which also has a door in this area, is used for storage or had been used for storage. So at the very least, one of these doors needed to remain in location. And so it's not used all the time or it's not needed to get in there. So I left this back door in my design scheme. I'd say leave this back door, cover this one here. And what I'm doing with this room is I'm playing a little game and I'm saying, I want to design this 28th Street freight terminal in O scale. And I'd also like to model a little bit of the city or another part of the city, maybe Brooklyn or New Jersey or some other place, to where um, there's various industries or cars coming in, say on a main line, being dropped into this area, maybe broken up into this small terminal back here, loaded on a barge, and then taken to the other terminal at New York City on Manhattan across um, the river. So what I'm envisioning is that these barges, which actually hold about, let's say it's one, two, three, four, five, I want to say five cars, 15 cars maybe on these barges, that these would be on carts and that you could move from side to side, bringing them over and kind of starting your session. These would be basically your staging areas. Now, this terminal area here is actually laid out to scale. It turns out that the distance down this side of the terminal is about 770 feet, and it's about 201 feet this size. As it turns out in O scale, you can lay that out in 5 feet by about 15 feet. And then the rest of the harbor area coming through into this area is also pretty much to scale. There was a road that went through this area here, which I think eventually became an overhead highway so that the tracks, the yard lead basically leading in this terminal went underneath that area. There wasn't a connection into a wharf, but in my design, I decided to go ahead and make a connection directly in. This area here, as you came off into this terminal, which was completely fenced off, by the way, there were truck loading areas that you came into the terminal. There was a very large uh, transfer warehouse here that was about 400 feet long by about 50 feet wide. There was another terminal in this area. Oops, I got a building that slipped in here by mistake. But anyways, it was just a very large freight terminal that was put in along here. And then you had these yard areas, which were very small, that could accommodate quite a few cars, but they would fill up quickly. So one thing I was reading is that this terminal, being because it was quite small, when it was about half full, it was literally full because in order for you to bring something else in and get something else out, you couldn't have more than that because these areas here, this runaround area here, really only held about 3 to 4 cars or 3 cars plus a small yard switching steam engine or little diesel switcher or say box cab, dependent upon what era you were modeling. So anyways, the point is I'm treating this kind of like a little island because it is like on an island. And then this area here, which is about 20 feet 6 inches long, and this is about 11 feet. This is 3 feet deep. It's a little large or depth wise 3 feet for most people. I'm rather tall. I'm 6'4". I've got a pretty good reach. And I feel that I could build this. And once the buildings and everything were in place, you're dealing with trackage that's really kind of up front. So it wouldn't be that big a deal to reach in 24 or 30 inches as needed. Plus, I'm imagining that all the switch machines along this area would be electronically operated. So having that kind of depth isn't that big deal. In a no scale, it's kind of needed in order to create some scenery room. The same thing with the layout of this area here. This being 5 feet across, it really is only 30 inches in from any one area for the most part. This area being a little wide, but at the same time, it's really just a place to show a model ship, uh, take cars in and out. It's really just for modeling the scenery. And then you have the barge area, which are movable. I'm also pretending that I'm not using up the entire basement for everything. I'm trying to keep room for um, some amenities. Having some friends over, operating this layout or layouts, and I'm imagining you could have at least 4 people, if not more, um, operating different areas because you've got somebody maybe operating this area, pretending that there's a load of cars that needs to be brought in and switched around maybe in here. Another area here that are are bringing some of these cars in, stacking them up in this small yard. That's then loading them on a barge, or you're moving this barge over to this area and unloading them. So you either have two barges that are on carts that are moved back and forth, or one just makes the trip back and forth. Once the barge comes into view, an engine comes in, starts pulling cars out, stacking them in the storage yard, and then positioning them where they need to go. So you've got somebody maybe operating this side of the terminal, maybe somebody operating that side of the terminal. So you can imagine four people maybe operating in this area. Maybe some others chit-chatting, sitting down, couch, some chairs, some bookcase display, maybe storage for cars and different things. The same thing with the barges and these carts. You could have little storage areas under there that kind of hold your cars, and then you pull those out and stack them up. Again, like a little staging cassette. Little coffee break area, and again, area to mill around in, maybe a television downstairs. I can see some artwork on the wall. But again, the idea is to keep this area flowing. There's a 5 foot space between the edge of the layout and the wall. There's a 3 foot space on this end. What that is allowing for is be able to come in here and service this water heater. Should you ever have to get it out, you could get it out and back up the stairs without disrupting the layout. So all that area in here is movable so that this water heater is accessible. So anyways, uh, that's kind of my theme on this. And again, you can see it's a very compact little yard, be little tight switching areas. And once again, this is all to scale. This is all prototypical to scale. And then you have this side here, which would be a layout all into itself. So instead of just filling the entire room with a layout, I was imagining this sort of thing. So let's have a little quick look maybe inside here a little closer. So you can see what's going on here, a little cart which would move around. Again, I've just laid out the track work with lines, and I've dropped in a few buildings. The buildings don't remain anything. They're kind of just holdouts or holding spots for what would really go there, almost schematic in nature. And some cars kind of showing you the scale relative to the people in the room and what would be happening. So I haven't really fleshed out a lot of the detail. This was done in SketchUp because I do a lot of starting with SketchUp when I'm doing some of this modeling, kind of going around. And again, as you come into this area here, I'm imagining, big city industrial buildings, maybe an engine service facility here for the switch engines, maybe a scrap yard up front. There's an opportunity here to maybe have a little bridge highway overpass. And I'm saying that this side is maybe where a train is brought in with 6, 7, 8 cars and then is broken up. And that's where the day would maybe start. Some of those cars would be taken over, broken up into this yard, loaded onto the barge. So again, a lot of switching operations, some setouts at some of these industries. And again, these industries are just buildings. I just grabbed some stuff, dropped it in there just to um, create some size and character right now. So not anything real, but I think it's enough to give you some flavor for what could be going on. Kind of the space around the room, just kind of hanging out. And again, this isn't an end-all design. It's just something kind of a study to see what could work and maybe to stimulate some ideas for others who might have a similar size space or just to get an idea what's possible. Um, if you did nothing else but this little terminal in O scale, that's 15 by 5. So consider if you had a garage area, um, maybe put a cassette on the end here, you could have a little switching layout all into itself. Obviously, in HO scale, you need roughly half the space. It doesn't work out exactly, but you can imagine something that's about Oh, 7.5 feet by 30 inches, just for that area there. So again, um, doable in HO scale. I like O scale if I can work it in. So with that, I just wanted to, share this with everybody and do this little video. I might turn this into a 3D video someday, but for now, I just wanted to share what I've been working on. I get this idea in my head, and I just have to get it down on paper or at least digitally. And I just wanted to share with you some of my thoughts on how I approach this design process for what I think is a pretty interesting switching layout, two separate layouts connected by barges with a lot of room for friends to gather, hang out, a lot of room to do the work, places to do the buildings and do the scenery, etc. So I hope you enjoyed this little overview and thanks for watching. If you like this, please hit that like button, in my YouTube channel, Scott Robertson 56, and might follow me also on my Facebook page. Thanks very much for watching. That's all for now. You have a great modeling day.